بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد ربي يسر وأعن واغفر يا أكرم الأكرمين. Respected viewers and students, I welcome you all to this webinar with Shaykh Abdullah Moataz, and I welcome Shaykh Abdullah Moataz specifically. Jazakumullah khairan for taking out the time to do this webinar. Shaykh Abdullah, barakallah feek. So, inshallah ta'ala, in this webinar, we'll be answering some questions pertaining to the webinar, pertaining to the course, Al Bayquniyyah. Some of these questions have been asked already. And towards the end, inshallah ta'ala, you'll also have a chance to ask any questions that haven't already been answered. Naam. So, Shaykh Abdullah, Bismillah. The stage is all yours. Inshallah ta'ala, if you could, Shaykh Abdullah, Barakallah Feek, start with a brief, or if you could mention to the students what your plans are with the course and why you chose Al-Bayquniyyah in particular, apart from some of the other texts. مثلا, why not At-Tadhkira by Ibn Mulaqqin or some other texts? Barakallah Feek.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi everyone. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ibrahim. I appreciate that. Welcome everyone. I'm excited to be teaching this text. And the idea behind selecting this text, I think there's a couple reasons why I selected it. Number one, it is probably the most famous basic text, right? Since it was authored from the very I think the very century that it was authored, you have explanations written upon it, and these explanations are written from scholars in Yemen, in Egypt, Syria, in what is now Saudi Arabia, right? So you have explanations on this uh, poem written by scholars from everywhere throughout the generations and from different backgrounds, right? So, you could call this the tahawiyya of hadith introductions.
Barakallah Feek. Naam.
um, I apologize. I do enjoy my own jokes. So for that reason, plus, um, uh, there's Bayquniyyah recently has gotten kind of a bad rep for not being very useful. And I think it's unfair to what the Bayquniyyah is, right? Bayquniyyah is, for a lot of us, was the first text that they ever studied and memorized. And that's what it was for me. And I think that without having gone through that initial stage, I would not have been able to continue on to other things, right? I think it offered a good foundation. And so I think it's a bad rep by some people um, in modern times. And so one of the aspects I'm hoping to bring about in the explanation is demonstrating its actual value, right? And sometimes, just sometimes, when people say that you can't gain benefit from something or something's not valuable, it says more about the person who's saying that than the actual text. It also says something sometimes where we're not understanding what the purpose of a text is, right? It's not someone, one of the common things they say, well, the Bikuni is not comprehensive. Yeah, well, it's not supposed to be. And he literally mentions it in the first few lines that it's not supposed to be comprehensive. So that's why I selected it. It's a good start. I wanted to also demonstrate its value. And it's something, personally, this was the first book I studied. So I think I've taught other books, but I think I wanted for this to do a restart of the Bayquniyyah, right? So um,
Barakallah
and
Feek,
I,
Shaykh.
and I, and I, and I think it should, like I said, one of the main things I had in mind when I was originally writing down my explanation was trying to demonstrate the value that the Bayquniyyah has, and I think that this is something that's going to set apart this course from almost anyone that explains and will explain or currently explains the Bayquniyyah.
Inshallah ta'ala. Barakallah feek. It's definitely the first text that I began with in Ulum al-Hadith as well. And I think most talabatul ilm begin with al-Bayquniyyah. So there is that barakah and qabul. And as you mentioned, it's makhdum. It has received a lot of service from the ulama across the Arab world. Barakallah feekum. Shaykh Abdullah, I think a question that is going around in the minds of some of the students is that how will, you mentioned a part of this already, how will this course approach the poem? Will it be purely just definitions of terms, or will students also get some insight into how ulama use these terms, the psyche of a muhaddith? Will they also get some insights into that?
Excellent question. And so I think that one of the things that will set this course apart is the fact that this is not simply an explanation of a poem. It's not an explanation of a poem linguistically. It's not an explanation of terms, right? The idea is we want to understand the term, understand how that term serves the end goal of hadith, which is authentication. We want to truly understand the term and what it means. Sometimes the multitude of terms, the terms that exist, can be confusing. So part of that, and I think what I focus on is understanding, well, what is the reality of this term? Is it a judgment? Is this a judgment? Is this a like a hukum? Is this simply a descriptor, right? And the second you start understanding, these aspects and how they relate to each other, I think it develops how you perceive and how you picture the issues of mustalah, the issues of ilm al-hadith, right? One of the other things I think that this course will have is understanding the philosophy behind this hadith method. The hadith method is not simply a math equation. It's not simply 1 plus 1 equals 2, thiqa plus thiqa equals sahih. That's not what it is, right? There is a lot of assumptions and reasoning that go behind the thinking, behind the creation of various terms and various ideas, various theories in hadith, right? And I think one of the purposes of this course is to, at a level that suits beginners, to go over that. One of the examples I think that I think is sets apart this course is, for example, when we talk about Hassan. Um, One of the things that we're going to talk about is 6 points on the concept of al hadith al hasan that kind of explains the philosophy behind the need for the existence of such a term, right? And I think that that's something that probably sets apart what we're going to talk about, or how we're going to discuss the poem compared with some of the other explanations that are out there, right? So there's going to be an emphasis on the philosophy, the fiqh of mustalah al hadith, right? And that's something that is, even for people that are intermediate, a lot of these issues are not discussed in clear terms. These are things that come with experience. These are things that are eventually understood, right? And so I think one of the values is not simply discussing them, but also explaining even how we get to them, right? As well. I like to bring up this example. There's a famous statement of Muslim, and you find it at Tirmidhi says the same thing as well. They talk about how the founders of hadith criticism, hadith methodology are who? Sufyan al-Thawri, Shu'bah, Malik bin Anas, Shu'bah bin Hajjaj, Yahya bin Sa'id al-Qattan, Abdurrahman al-Mahdi, etc. The question is, when I, as a, in the 21st century, I'm picking up a hadith, primer that was written 400 years ago or 300 years ago or whenever, right? And I read it and I see Sahih, Hasan, Da'if, Mu'allaq, Mursal, etc. What is the relationship between those terms and the founders of ilm al-hadith, those that created essentially the science. What's the relationship between the final product and what was talked about and produced by these early hadith figures? And I think that that's also something that, at a basic level, we do cover in here, and that's something that I think is very valuable because you can't always see the direct relationship between, hey, here is the term muttarib. Okay, how does that relate back to a concept that was talked about or an idea that was expressed by Shu'ba or Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? So that's another aspect I think that we're going to definitely cover. And I think that these aspects are very important for a beginner. The unfortunate reality of, Dars al-Hadith al-Mu'asir, I think, the current hadith style of teaching is that a lot of discussions related to the philosophy behind the science are things that are relegated to more advanced. However, I think that these things are better suited for beginners, right? Number one, because it, I think, instills a sense of confidence, right, in the beginner, but also because these are ideas that once you have them as a beginner, a lot of things make sense later on, right? There's a reason why. I mean, the term sahih is covered first because you build upon the ideas that are in sahih. Well, the same should apply to other things as well, right? Once you have certain, at least the basic stone set for understanding the philosophy of hadith, then everything else becomes easier after. Wallahu a'lam.
Barakallah fiqh, Shaykh Abdullah. Now, you've mentioned, Shaykh Abdullah, that this course is perfectly suitable for the beginners. But can intermediate students of hadith studies also benefit from this course?
Yes. And so the way I designed it, and it's similar to the course I did with, for example, Zidni for Ilham al-Mughith as well, which is um, it if you come into the course with not knowing anything, you will benefit from it. This will give you a foundation. If you come already having studied something, I guarantee you what you'll hear from me and what you'll benefit from the course is going to be new, right? This is not going to be your run of the mill hadith course that you've gotten from some other people, right? This will be different, and I think that alhamdulillah, I don't think anyone has taken a course on hadith with me and has come out thinking, oh, hadith is boring, or oh, I didn't get anything from that, right? I think that the generally the feedback has been quite positive, right? So if you've already studied something, you might have even studied the same book. You might have studied Bayquniyyah before. You might have studied a higher book, but I guarantee you that you will hear things, and there will be discussions in this basic course that you've not discussed in an intermediate. Not in a way that will confuse a beginner, but in a way that will provide a background for a beginner to go to something and appreciate something deeper, and will give also probably an intermediate level student a greater idea of something they've already discussed and studied. So this
Barakallah
is
fiqh.
ideal for a beginner, and if you're an intermediate, I think it's also a decent option as well.
Jazakumullah khairan. Barakallah fikum. A lot of students have
But
asked.
and I don't want to sound conceited when I say this, right? Because I do fear that I may come off as conceited when I say this. But having seen what is out there and hearing what people say and get surprised at information which I do consider to be relatively basic, that's the only conclusion I can come to, right? So this is not me trying to be conceited, أعوذ بالله من نفسي, but I think that it's a quality product, right? I stand by it.
Barakallah fiqh. Barakallah fiqh. Naam, definitely some of the reviews that I've seen from the Sydney students, Allahumma barik, that they've been really happy with the. I saw some for the Ilham al-Mughith course. Allahumma barik, they mentioned that they benefited a lot from the program, and inshallah ta'ala, I'm sure that the students who've signed up for Bayquniyyah will benefit equally, inshallah ta'ala. Some of the students have asked Sheikh Abdullah, like, is this going to be like a one-off appearance for Sheikh Abdullah with the Arabic school, or is this going to be a series of, inshallah ta'ala, other courses building up to a more advanced level of study?
I think that's a question for you to answer. As long as you like me, I'm here. No, inshallah, yes. That's the plan. That's the plan. Yeah.
Inshallah
But yeah,
ta'ala.
that's a question
بإذن
directed at you.
الله. No, of course, it would be nothing better than to have you on board for a very long time, teaching a complete curriculum of علوم الحديث from start to finish, inshallah ta'ala. Well, there is no finish for any of the ulum. بحر لا ساحل له, but still up to an advanced level, inshallah ta'ala. Do you think students can study نخبة الفكر after this, Sheikh?
Yeah, I think it would be great.
Inshallah
And
ta'ala. Inshallah ta'ala.
I,
So, Sheikh,
it would not be a 10-week course though. It would definitely be longer.
no, no,
Yeah.
definitely. 100%. Sheikh, by the end of this course, and this is my last question for you, inshallah ta'ala, and then we can, if the students have any questions, they can ask. By the end of the course, what should a student be able to do? And I think you've partially answered this as well. What should a student be able to do that they couldn't do before?
Okay, good question. Number one, they will be able to understand all the terms that are in there. Number one, like all the appropriate hadith terms, relevant hadith terms, they'll be able to understand it and understand them at more than simply a definition level, right? They'll understand the philosophy behind it and how it relates to, like I said, the end goal of hadith, the true, venture, which is authentication of hadith. That's number one. Number two, I do believe that they'll be able to open a let's say a book of rijal, a book of biographical data of transmitters. And I'm not going to say that they're fully going to understand it, but they will understand at a basic level different things there. More than simply having a comprehension of the language, but they can understand, why a certain word is used and not another word, why a certain judgment is given and not another judgment, and so they'll be able to appreciate that. I think that if they're reading someone else's judgment classification, someone's takhrij, authentication research or criticism of a hadith, I think they'll be able to follow the discussion in a way that allows them to benefit. I'm not saying that they're going to be able to make their own judgment, right? But they'll definitely be able to follow the discussion and perhaps see, in at least sometimes, which argument may have more validity than the other, right? I'm not suggesting that they're going to be able to make their own ahkam, but at least they can follow the discussion and then perhaps see the validity or the merit of some arguments, right? Even if they're not able to come to the conclusion independently, or even make a final choice of which one they think is better, but at least they'll be able to have an appreciation and a deeper understanding when they're following that discussion.
Barakallah feek, Sheikh Abdullah. Jazakumullahu khaira. So there are a few
And there's an end
questions.
result of that, though. Sorry to interrupt, but there's an end result of that, which is lots of times I've said this on many occasions. In a time where you have people with lots of different ideas, people with doubts about Islam, misconceptions, doubts about sources, primary sources of Islam. Um, uh, this is a very important topic. I think that from the side of those that are enthusiastic about Hadith and Islamic sources, there is a group of people that they think that they can simply study a refutation of misconceptions and doubts. They think that they can um, uh, study defending the Sunnah, right? And there's no subject called defending the Sunnah. There's no subject called a refutation of doubts about the Sunnah, for example. No, there are people that understand Hadith and the method, and as a result, they're able to see the fallacy of arguments against it, right? And I think that uh, it's not the main purpose of this course, but the end result is that a person will be able to see that as well, right? And that's a I think an important, unintended, if it is, right, consequence.
Barakallah fikum. Barakallah fikum, Shaykh Abdullah. There's a few questions here, or a couple of them, and if other brothers want to ask, inshallah, they can ask too. There's a question for the admin, that would be me. Can we send additional money to sponsor students who can't afford it? Yes, you can absolutely do that. I will leave my email in our email in the chat, and you can contact us via email, and we can provide you with further details, and you can sponsor students who want to join the course but who aren't able to afford the fee. Barakallah fikum for the initiative. May Allah accept it. Brother Edgar has asked, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, how will the class incorporate the Arabic component that we're learning at the Arabic school? Is there any Arabic related benefit from studying Al-Bayquniyyah, Sheikh?
I mean, I other than the words that are going to be there, I can't say that there is. I'll be honest. Um, yeah.
Barakallah feek. So I'll definitely say this. Whenever, whichever metin you study in Arabic, it does give you some of the Arabic vocabulary, but that's pretty much it. That's all that you'll get from it in terms of Arabic. No.
I'll say this, I come from the background that I call them Jama'at I'rab al Basmala. I have at a deep level I do have a problem with people that'll take a text and make it about something that it's not. You study it. They'll do the Arab of the Basmala. Then we'll have what's the difference. What's the difference between Hamd and Shukr and the Prophet and a messenger. There's the first 10, 15 pages, and it's nothing about the science that you're interested in, right? So I do have like a bone to pick with that. So I choose to avoid anything that's not directly related to the topic. I had a student of mine. He told me he attended a Bayquniyyah course and it lasted months. And he was like, I came out of it and I learned a thing or two about poetry, but I don't think I gained anything from in a hadith sense. So I'm aiming it for it to not be that way.
Wallahi, I attended a course on Al-Bayquniyyah as well. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen's Sharh of Bayquniyyah, the first, I think, 1.5 hour was just about the Basmala. And I left after the second session. Like, I have the same issue. If the text is not about that subject, one shouldn't make it about that subject. Nah, barakallah feek. All right. Another student has asked, is memorization of the poem recommended?
Recommended, yeah. I think so, yeah.
Mustahab.
I mean, you don't
Not
have to, but definitely recommended. I think it's easy to. It's 30 something lines,
nah.
right? It's easy.
Nah, inshallah ta'ala. All right, another student, Sheikh, has asked, I have not previously studied hadith. Could you please clarify the students' weekly responsibilities for this online course? Is the course primarily lecture based, or are there additional expectations beyond listening?
It's lecture based. I do hope that you take notes. I try to provide summaries as well. This is based off of a written explanation that I already have, which I might share portions of. There will be a test at the end.
Inshallah.
That's about it. But it's primarily based off of what I say in the lecture, which, like I said, I'll provide inshallah summaries. But I do hope that people are taking notes.
Inshallah ta'ala. Inshallah. Do we have any other questions from the viewers, from the students? It seems that we do not. So, inshallah ta'ala, with that, we will end the webinar, inshallah ta'ala, bi'idhnillah al-kareem. If you do have any further questions, feel free to email us, and I'll forward the questions to Sheikh Abdullah and the answers, we can forward them to you, inshallah. And we look forward to seeing you all in the course with Sheikh Abdullah. And Sheikh Abdullah, Jazakallah khair for taking out the time for answering the questions.
I
Barakallah
appreciate
feek.
it.
And we're excited to get started, inshallah ta'ala.
I'm excited too. Allah barik fikum and hope to see everyone.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.